You know, had it not been for the words over what they were talking about, I would have never known what those guys were saying. It turns out, though, that they were snickering and ripping the President of the United States earlier this week at the NATO summit. Well, who's snickering now? Because while there is widespread protest going on in the streets of France, and the president there has approval ratings in the single digits, look at these numbers in the United States. President Trump can tout strong job numbers here in the U.S., an unemployment rate at a 50-year low, not to mention a stock market at or near historic highs. Former aide to Maggie Thatcher, Nile Gardiner on all these developments. You know, it is weird timing, but maybe it's karma. But these guys who were snickering behind his back and saying God knows what, I didn't find the stuff they were saying too over-the-top offensive. I mean, but anyway, it comes at a time when he's putting up, you know, big numbers and strong numbers. Whether you want to give the president credit, we'd certainly blame him if it were the opposite. What do you think of all this?
Yeah, I think it's very unfortunate to see Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, and Emmanuel Macron, the French president, sort of snickering away, mocking the US president at the NATO summit. I think they like to see themselves as sort of, you know, Laurel and Hardy comedy act at times, and I think that it's very unfortunate that you've got this kind of you know, mocking of the US president at a time when the US president is actually leading on the world stage with regard to strengthening the NATO alliance, and also President Trump is leading in terms of a very strong, robust US economy. And if you look at the state of the French economy today compared to the US economy, there's no real comparison. The United States has at least twice the level of economic growth. France has several times the level of unemployment. The French economy, which has been sort of worn down by decades of big government socialism, is very, very problematic. And you've seen large-scale protests on the streets of French cities over the past few days. And Emmanuel Macron has huge problems on his hands domestically. He's also overall a very unpopular president. And so when you see this kind of juvenile behavior at the NATO summit coming from some NATO members, it's very sad to see. And also it's important to point out that the Canadians, for example, spend just about 1.3% of GDP on defence. The United States invests 3.42% of GDP on defence. The French invest just 1.86%. And so the United States really does lead on the world stage with regard to the NATO alliance.
Nile, that Trudeau was making these sort of obsequious comments because the president called it out on him for the world's cameras to hear live? What are you forking over for defense? And he had to answer him. And now I know that's very undiplomatic. I know that's usually the stuff discussed behind closed doors. But, you know, I think he just felt like, you know, ripping the guy after that.
Yeah, I think, you know, Trudeau basically is, you know, is a leader who lacks, you know, gravitas and heft on the world stage.
The president says he's two-faced.
Yeah. And he is actually two-faced, absolutely. And, you know, let's see the Canadians actually investing more in the NATO alliance. Let's see Canada standing shoulder to shoulder with the United States. And
well, Maggie Thatcher ran into this on her own continent, right, when you were working with her. I mean,
yeah.
I have a view that, you know, when it comes to conservative leaders, this left-leaning European society doesn't flip over conservative ones, particularly from America. Ronald Reagan experienced this. Both the Bush father and son experienced this. This president getting a little bit more of it. But isn't that kind of like the way Europe is?
Yeah, I think you always have the European elites who are, you know, mocking the United States and also mocking Great Britain. There's a great deal of anti-British sentiment at the moment in Europe over Brexit. But the reality is that it's the US and the UK, the two countries that lead the free world, that keep the world safe, the beating heart of the free world. And let's face it, a lot of European elites and also Canadian leaders as well are envious, I think, of the kind of leadership that the United States and Great Britain project, actually.
Thank you, Niall. And here's one thing we don't do in this country, put egg on our food, all our food. A little more after this.